And welcome to another exciting episode of The Energy That Surrounds Us. I'm your host, Michael, and I am joined tonight by a guest I have been so looking forward to having on. I had the blessing of watching her on Andy Decode's show, and so if you caught her on that show, I promise, as much as I can, I won't ask the same questions. Because, as you all know me, I don't have any questions pre-set up. So we will see where this goes. But I am so grateful and honored to have this guest with us tonight. I was so excited when she agreed to be a guest. So I am going to turn it over to Cyn Shrader Hill to introduce herself.
Well, I'm just happy to be here. I'm glad you had a spot that I could come on, and I appreciate you so much. So, I've already got somebody on my page saying hi. So, Pam, hi. And she's also saying, yep. So, you can see hers, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. Good. So, a little bit about me. I am from Tennessee. I live in southern Middle Tennessee, just north of Huntsville, Alabama, in Lincoln County. So it's about 30 miles north of Huntsville and about 2 hours south of Nashville. And that's where the accent comes in. I used to hide the accent, but now I just let it go. You know, why hold it in? It's all good.
Exactly. My accent only comes out when I say certain words, and it's random words like soda
Yeah, yeah.
or Minnesota. It's like
Minnesota.
I just yeah. It's like so many people have said, "What are you drinking?" I'm like soda, and they're like, "No, really, what are you drinking?" I'm like soda. I can't not say it that way. It's like the only word I just cannot use without the accent.
It's not bad. It's not a bad accent though.
No, the
No.
only one that's confusing, the only word is pop. Because
Yeah.
we put an emphasis in it, and it's like that means it's a drink. It's not a sound. So
Right. Right.
everybody gets confused when they're like, "So what are you having?" I'm like, "Pop," and they're like, "What?" I'm like, "Soda, soda." Let's just stick with soda.
And see, over here in the South, if you ask somebody what they're drinking, they might just say Coke. I'm having a Coke. And that's all inclusive for any kind of sodas, any kind of, you know, pop, whatever.
See, if
So just say that.
I would have expected being in the deep South region, you all would be like, tea. We're having iced tea or lemonade.
You know, I grew up on iced tea and I got tired of it. So tired of it. I just said, Mama, please don't pour me any more iced tea. I can't stand it. So I don't drink it anymore. My husband loves it, but no, not me.
Oh, it's so funny the things we perceive from what people tell us about it regions. It's like, yeah, everyone just assumes something. And the one soda though that's interesting that I'm like surprised finally made its way up north was Dr. Pepper.
And Sundrop.
I've never heard of Sundrop.
Oh, Michael, Michael, Michael. It is a staple in the South. It's some people compare it to Mountain Dew, but Southerners like Sundrop better than Mountain Dew. And it's got that extra kick in it with the caffeine. And just a few, when I lived in Texas, I talked to you before the show that I lived in Texas all over. And I was a physical therapy assistant. So I would travel and be in whatever place for at least 3 months up to a year, depending on how much they needed help. And so mom would pack everyone, like every 2 weeks, she would pack 2 3-liter sun drops and mail them to me.
Three
I don't,
liters. Wow.
yeah, I don't know what it cost her. No idea. But it was heavy. And and when I would come home for a visit, that was the first thing I would grab in the store is a sun drop. And I would go to Crystal and have little Crystal burgers and go to Krispy Kreme and grab a donut. Now, Krispy Kreme is all over the place.
Yeah,
And
and they're kind of actually they seemed like a fad because it's like everybody wanted to be there, and now it's like everyone's like, "Oh, we lost Krispy Kreme, no big deal. That's okay."
really, not here, not here. Krispy Kreme is king. I could
Oh,
actually
okay.
go for a couple right now. I could go for 2 or 3.
Especially when they're hot. That's the
Yeah.
one thing I remember is waiting for the hot sign.
Yes. Yes. And they're covered up when that hot sign comes on.
Yeah, and even the chocolate was like worth waiting for. The chocolate covered.
Hmm. Chocolate iced cream filled is my favorite.
So is that like your go-to before an investigation?
Sometimes, just depends on where we are. Um, Usually, though, keep it kind of light and just go grab like a Subway sandwich or something. I'm not a heavy eater before an investigation for some reason. I don't know why, but Subway, one of those kind of sandwiches, Firehouse Subs, something is just easier and quick and not too much. Doesn't make you sleepy and you're ready to go.
Well, and usually doesn't make you gurgly either.
No, no, yeah, that's a good thing.
Like, yeah, some people forget about that when they go eat beforehand and then going, yeah, note to self, keep the EVP machines and recorders away from that person.
Yeah, where did they go? Oh, to the Mexican buffet. Oh no.
Oh, yeah, those are the worst.
Ah, oh no.
So I know you've probably been asked this a lot, but what got you into the paranormal?
I have always loved scary stories. Poe was my favorite author back since age 10. So I was reading Edgar Allan Poe, Telltale Heart, and all that kind of stuff when I was little. My mom, when I was little, my bedtime story she would read me was The Highwayman. And it's pretty violent. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do it. I'm sitting here picturing
It's
a little
freaking
kid going to sleep, and this is the last thoughts that she has before going to sleep and going, yeah, you're gonna have some really great dreams.
I I did. And see, mom, from first grade on, was in drama, speech class, excuse me, speech class. And so she would, do the intonations and change her voice for the characters. And I mean, I was into it. The highwayman came riding up to the old inn door. And I was just focused on that. And looking back years later, I'm like, oh my God, this woman was bound to a bed. She was raped. They, the highwaymen were coming and, I don't know what all kinds of stuff. And it was violent,
Yeah.
and I loved it. My grandmother when we were in her house actually, and when I got old enough to sleep in a regular bed, we didn't have enough room, so I slept in my grandmother's double bed with her. And I actually have this story. It's the first story in my first book. It's my bedtime story. And it's about my great uncle that was riding his horse home, and he was a scaredy cat. He was a freaking scaredy cat. And I've got a couple of funny stories about him, but he was just this little country gentleman on his way home in the rain, and it's got really bad. So he stopped at this church, and back then, early 1900s, late 1800s, the doors weren't locked. So he went into this church, tied his horse up outside, and thought, I'll get through the storm and just sit inside where it's quiet. And of course, there was no lights, and he kept hearing something like swish, 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 and I'm just imagining that. I'm just imagining that. And then he'd hear it again, and the lightning would flash and it would light up the whole room, and he couldn't see anybody in there. He was all by himself on the front row, and he was just thinking, oh, it's just my nerves. And then he'd hear it again, something, and it was getting closer and closer and closer, and he was getting terrified. The lightning was flashing, everything would light up, he didn't see anything, and then all of a sudden these arms came from around the back of him and hugged him. This woman had escaped from the poor farm, and she was a little mentally unstable, and she had stopped into the church too because it was storming, and he had no idea, but it scared the bejeebies out of him. And the last sentence my grandmother always said was, "Boo, now go to sleep." And I would. So, I mean, I've liked stuff like that since I was little. And later on, when it got to be all the shows coming on, I was like, man, I want to do that, but I don't know how. Have no idea how. And my cousin had a group come down and investigate her art studio. So I got the same team to come down and investigate my mom and dad's old store. We had lost dad in 2001. And so this was 2013, and I wanted to see if he was still there. The store had been closed, the utilities, everything was off. And his energy was in the same spot that his chair had sat for over 30 years. That's the only place that their instruments went off. And I thought that was kind of cool that, it was probably residual, but it was there. And they got a couple of EVPs. Once they caught those EVPs, that's where I got the bug bad. And I ended up joining their team. They trained me, and I started learning how to find the audio. And so my first piece of equipment, other than a digital recorder, was I just saw that flash up. Oh, digital recorder was a spirit box. And I loved listening to the spirit box. Everybody else on the team hated it. And you know why? It's just loud. It's, just way too loud. But it seemed like I could hear some of the voices coming out of it. And then when I'd take it home and upload everything to my computer, I could find more. So that is what really drew me in bad. And I knew I wanted my own team. Once they got me trained in equipment, how to ask questions of the residents, whatever, how to be safe, all of the above, I started my own team, brought somebody I had just trained on the team, and we formed Elk Valley Paranormal, EVP for short. So there you are.
Yeah, and thinking about, the chair being in that spot, it could be residual, or it could be, obviously if that's where he sat all these years, it's his favorite spot. So
Yep.
he
Mhm.
might be sitting there going, well, if these people are going to get in touch with her, let's use my favorite spot because she'll recognize that and know that right off the bat.
Absolutely. Absolutely. He sat there every night after he closed down. Mom would go home to help my grandmother get dinner ready. And he would sit, have a drink, and watch Hee Haw and Wheel of Fortune. So he watched both of those before he came home, but he had his drink while he did it to unwind. And yeah, that was his favorite spot. Um, it
Well,
was, go ahead.
I was going to say it's probably a good thing that he did that too, because if he had a rough customer or a rough day, he took the time to unwind, leave it at the store, and not bring it home.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's actually really cool that he would do that.
He did it every day, and they were open Monday through Saturday. I will tell you a funny story about him. Um, oh my gosh, he would crack me up, and he would get so tickled at his own jokes that he would have that silent laugh. It was like a horse laugh, but no sound comes out, and he would just about be crying about it. His thing is, if he got upset, he would hide it from the customers and take all he could until he couldn't take any more. And so if he had a difficult customer in there, and there were especially other people waiting to be get a part or whatever, if he was having trouble, and I mean they wouldn't stop and they wouldn't listen to him or whatever, he would take out of his billfold. And my sister found this after he died and has kept it. It's like one of her treasures, and it's the funniest thing I think he has done that I know of. But this is so him. He would get exasperated, not show it, but he'd reach into his billfold and pull out this. He had laminated it himself with scotch tape, or, clear transparent tape. And it was just a little note, and he'd slide it across the counter to the customer and say, "I'm tired of your shit. Leave." And
Oh
then
my
he'd just,
God.
then he'd just pull it back. He didn't say a word. They read it, and then he'd pull it back and put it in his billfold.
Oh my God, that's hilarious. I'm like, totally was expecting something else. That is, oh, that would be hilarious to
Oh,
me. I'd
so
be like going, "What did you show that person that they left?"
my
Finally,
my sister worked with him, so it was my mom and my dad and my sister for the last several years that it was open. And then when he died in '01, it was just my mom and my sister for a couple of years, and then they decided to close it down because it was just too hard on keeping an auto parts store going um, in a small town in the South when there was O'Reilly's and Advanced and all the above, even Walmart selling that. So they closed it up. But Susan has seen him push that across the counter, and she found out what it said. So she knew about it before she showed it to me. So she knew about it. But oh my gosh, that was just my dad.
yeah. I mean, you would think as a business owner, you would never say that to a customer,
Exactly.
but
And he didn't. He didn't. And especially speak it so anybody else knew what was going on. He would just slide it across the counter. And the counter was probably 30 feet long. It was, I mean, a big auto parts store. And so, if somebody was down at one end of the counter or the other, he was in the middle, always in the middle, and just slide it across. Nobody else saw it, but that customer left.
probably got a lot of applauses too. We actually have a question from
Okay.
Isaac9. These paranormal activities brings on unwanted attachments.
Sometimes. Yeah, sometimes. Um, and things can be attached to people or objects or places or anything, and you might not know that. A lot of times, going into an antique store, you might find something that you really like and bring it home, and it's got an attachment. Or you might be in a store and avoid something for some reason, like, and you don't know why. It might have an attachment.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I always am curious about when people have like haunted locations or, you know, collect these items like dolls and stuff. I'm like, you do realize what you're bringing in, right? And I hope it all mixes well
Right.
because I would, not want to be around if you have a haunted doll that deems top seat, and then you bring another haunted doll in that's like, no, I'm the top seat,
Oh, can you
or
imagine?
even another one, and have like a battle of the dolls.
Oh, and some dolls are just creepy anyway, just to look at them.
Oh yeah,
Mm-mm. Yeah,
I
my
refuse to go into doll rooms for that reason.
yeah, they're not my favorite. And I used to collect dolls. I used to collect them, but I don't have them anymore. I've got two China dolls that my grandmother gave me, and I have a doll that I bought in Germany. Um, and I think that's all the dolls I have. I have a couple of stuffed animals that I won't get rid of because they're black cats and I love cats. But and I have a bat my sister gave me, a little stuffed bat. But there's no attachments to any of those.
That raises an interesting question for me. I just thought about that when you were talking about having stuffed animals. We always hear about haunted dolls,
Hmm.
haunted mirrors, or haunted furniture or clothing, but I don't think I've ever heard anybody say this teddy bear that I picked up has got a spirit in it and is
Shall I
haunted.
shall I tell you a story?
Ooh, please do.
So one of the last residential investigations my team has done, Michael, who lives in around the Coleman, Decatur, Alabama area, got us. This was before he actually joined our team, but he got us a residential investigation. The family was having a lot of problems. It was centering around the children, and the grandmother was worried that it was going to get worse. They heard footsteps, they heard banging, cabinets opening, closing, doors opening, closing, just a lot of different things. They lived on a drop off. So they were at the top of a drop off down to the lake over around that area. And so, water helps with the spirit energy getting around and all that kind of stuff. We went through, and it was a heavy, just you walk inside and it's heavy, but not stifling. So nothing actually happened as far as noises while we were there, but the EMF detectors kept going off around the hallway. And so we were trying to pinpoint exactly where it was. And we were in the hallway. And the hallway wasn't comfortable. That was the most uncomfortable place in this. And it was a double wide. So this little hallway that went down to the back bedroom on one end of the double wide, and the small bathroom that they shared with the daughter on that side. Um, it was claustrophobic feeling. It was just something was off. And we were trying to pinpoint why all the detectors kept going off and trying to rule out different things, trying to narrow it down. And we finally did. We went into the little girl's room. The little girl was about 8 years old, and she had toys in her room, clothes, just little girl stuff. In her closet, she had normal clothes, normal toys, and it was a stack in the closet, kind of like, oh, got to clean my room up. Let's throw it in the closet and shut the door, kind of like that.
Right.
And I mean, a lot of people do that. So we were trying to figure out, where is this coming from? It was around the closet. And we kept trying to narrow it down. So Michael and Sean, my co-founder, started pulling things out one by one and holding it up. They pulled out, finally, toward the middle bottom of this stack in the corner of the closet, this stuffed animal. It wasn't a bear. I cannot remember if it was a rabbit or what exactly it was, but it was about 1.5 feet tall and about, I don't know, 8 to 10 inches wide. And the things were going crazy around this animal. The animal looked normal. It looked like a little kid's animal, a cute little animal. It was fuzzy. It was sweet looking. Nothing bad. It did not have like fangs, like a Halloween thing. So they look for a battery compartment. They look for anything they could find. And there was nothing. It was just a stuffed animal. There was an attachment to it. So we asked the grandmother, where did this come from? And she said, oh, we went to a yard sale. And hang on just a second. Sorry.
Oh, your friendly yard sale.
Right?
From the Munsters house.
Sorry about that. So they had picked up, the little girl saw this animal and would not leave until they paid $0.25 for it and she got to bring it home. She played with it and played with it. And then when she got tired of it, she put it in the closet and covered it up and kept covering it up. So we don't know if she was actually having nightmares and different things. So I don't know if that was causing the nightmares or exacerbating them or what. But Michael took the stuffed animal outside when he asked the grandmother, what do you want me to do? She said, get that thing out of here. He took it out and he took it away, burned it, and buried the ashes and all that good stuff. But that is the first stuffed animal that I had ever heard of as well. And they looked for everything possible. How could it be setting off anything? There was nothing, no battery, no electrical, anything. It was a stuffed animal.
I'm just like picturing in my head shows like Haunted Collector, where they hunt for this object and put it in a museum. How many people would walk by and see a stuffed animal and go, really?
Exactly.
This is what you're putting in your museum now?
And I tell you, if you saw that stuffed animal that we took out, you would go, no way. No way.
Well, I'm kind of curious, because kids are so resilient. If she knew it was coming from the stuffed animal, and that's why she would bury it.
I think so.
And when it would start up again, she'd bury it even more, thinking the lower it is in the pile, the harder it'll be to get out. It'll just give up.
Mm-hmm. I think so. Truly think so.
But that is cool. I love when I hear like random things like that of you would never expect, and it's like, just wait. And I'm just waiting for the next story when somebody writes in and goes, "Oh, my He-Man action figures or my Barbie dolls are moving on their own." It's like,
Oh no. You never know. You never know what's going to come up.
yeah. And the thing too is, we assume that it was haunted from the get go, and it could have been something in the house that said, "Oh, look, I'll attach to this stuffed animal because they'll never get rid of that,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
and I'll be able to hang around all the time." And then, lo and behold, they're
Right?
like,
They
"Man,
never
they actually figured it out."
they never had any problems before after she was thinking about it. The problems never started until after that yard sale, sometime
Oh, okay.
after. So
Yeah.
that was the whole problem.
And truth be told, it could also be there was a spirit at the yard sale that was like, "Ooh, I could attach to this doll and get into that place and be
Absolutely.
welcomed."
Absolutely. Yeah. You just never know.
No.
Never know. And it could be that they saw the little girl and went, "Oh, that's my person. That's the one I want to be close to." You know?
And what's the most closest you can get? Their stuffed animal.
Yep. Yep.
So, note to self, kids: check your stuffed animals with K2s before you take them home.
And be careful at yard sales, estate sales, antique stores, secondhand shops, all that stuff.
Oh yeah, I always get creeped out when I walk into like thrift stores, and I'm like, I really don't want to know the story of this. That looks so cool because I have a feeling the story is going to totally make me go, not so cool anymore.
Yeah, yeah. I have a friend, a really good friend of mine. She has a store in this, uh, well, downtown in Fayetteville, about 15 miles from me. Valerie Talent Young. And for a while, she was on the south side of the square, and that place was haunted. It was haunted. Um, and she also, it was young, vintage, and antiques at that time, and she sold some antiques. So she would go to estate sales and buy things she liked and um, bring them back and fix them up, do different things. Well, she had a couple of things happen, and one was with a lady's chifforobe. She had it in the store. She was going to paint it and then decided, nah, I'm just going to leave it out there, let somebody come get it. And then she finally dropped the price to almost nothing. And someone said, I want that. And she said, come get it. Come get it. And I mean, almost nothing is maybe $30 for this big piece of furniture. So she hadn't marked it down that much just to get rid of it. So this woman came in and she goes, I really like that. I want to put that in my daughter's room. I'm thinking about painting it and fixing it. And Valerie said, I think that would be great. And so she took it. So the chifforobe's gone. And a few months later, Valerie's going around to yard sales again, and she happens upon this one, and it's the lady that bought the chifforobe. The chifforobe is in her garage, still unpainted, and exactly the way she had picked it up at Valerie's. And Valerie said, I thought you were going to paint that. She said, yeah, something I just decided I just can't do. I think I'm going to get rid of it. I don't know. Maybe I will paint it. And Valerie said, I think that's probably a good idea. She said, yeah, I guess I need to do that. So something about that thing kept putting them off for whatever reason. Now, the other thing she had gotten it as a estate sale, and it was a gun cabinet of a young man that had died prematurely. And his mother had kept his room exactly the way it was when he passed. And I think this guy was in his late 20s or early 30s. Um, I believe that's right. So it was just a hunting cabinet with his guns in it. And of course, they took the guns out, and Valerie had the gun cabinet for sale. She had it, and anything she would put next to it would be moved a little bit. And things would drop off the shelves or just weird, weird things happening. And one day, she had a helper that was working. She was down there by herself. They had a back room where Valerie did put worked on fixing up things and putting things together back there. So the curtain was pulled, but the woman was standing at a register and saw out of the corner of her eye a shadow and looked, and there was a man in that back room. And she had not heard anybody come in. There was not a back door. So she was thinking, oh my God, did somebody get in and spend the night here? Or how did they sneak in without me knowing? She went back and looked. There's nobody back there. And she looked, turned all the lights on. She looked in the bathroom back there. She looked under stuff. Nobody's back there. So she'd go back to what she was doing and she'd see the figure again. And she called Valerie and she said, I need you to come down here. Valerie said, what's going on? She said, I'm just not comfortable. I'm just not comfortable. And told her once she got there. And they ended up selling the gun cabinet to another person that took it. And when that left, the shadow left. But evidently, the boy was still attached to his gun cabinet. Now, he wasn't trying to scare anybody. He was just letting them know he was there.
Yeah. I'm kind of curious because I have a metaphysical background, and one of the things that we do when an energy in a room feels off, like if it's really heavy, and if saging doesn't work, is we paint the room, and it tends to change the energy. I'm wondering, like that object that they were wanting to paint, if they actually painted it, would that affect the spirit attached to it, or is that just something that we're like wishful thinking that
I don't know. I'm Valerie. Valerie and I have talked long and hard about it, and we believe that if it had been painted, it would have helped. Now, um, there we have a friend that's very, very sensitive. Valerie's very sensitive as well, but and she can see spirits. Adam is a friend of ours that is also very sensitive, and he came in one day to her store and said she doesn't like the color, and that's all he said. And he didn't know what he was talking about. He wasn't sure, but he just said she doesn't like the color. So Valerie was wondering if it was that chifforobe.
maybe,
Yeah, yeah,
it's one thing we don't think about because we're always like going, how do we remove an attachment from an object? And I'll admit I never had the idea to go, I could have paint on it.
right. I don't think I would have thought to do that. But
Yeah.
I mean, and when you talk about painting a room or something, what kind of color do you think would be best?
Well, so I had a room in my house that was like a yellow tannish color when I bought the house. And I was like, this is like a middle room between the master and a smaller room. And I was like, I feel like putting a sanctuary room between my room and the rest of the house. So I was like, what color, resonates with me? And I was like, purple. So against everybody's wishes, I did a faux purple or a purple color on the walls. And yeah, it took a lot of paint to get the purple to stay and the other colors not to bleed through, even after priming, which I thought was interesting.
Hmm.
But once the purple was done, it felt totally different.
Did it?
And so I can't help wondering whatever was there, because usually like one or two coats of paint, room's done. I think
Hmm.
it took like three coats of paint to get those purple to adhere right.
Wow.
So I can't help wondering now, was something trying to keep that room from being totally painted,
Probably trying to keep it kind of a drab color, don't you think?
or at least something to where it's like they had, so like if they were attached to the color,
Mm-hmm.
have like a spot where that color just wouldn't disappear and bleeds through, so they have an anchor point
Right.
where I guess my subconscious was like, we're not giving you an anchor point, and covered all the spots up. And I it does make you wonder, when we say they're attached to a room, if it's an object, could it be they're attached to the paint in the wall? We don't ever think about,
Mm-hmm.
that as an option, and be like, how many places that people are like, you just can't live here,
Mm-hmm.
could be improved by saying, change the color of paint.
Right.
Paint it something that brings you joy. Like my master bedroom, the color I chose was spa, and it was this bright blue. And everybody was like, wow, this is like really bright blue. How do you sleep in this? I'm like, it's soothing, because to me, spa is a
Uh-huh.
place where you relax. So my mind attached to the name of this color and was like, to me, it was relaxing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think it could. I think it very well could.
I think I just found a new niche for the paranormal field.
Hey, there you go.
Paranormal painters.
We'll lighten up your space
We'll get your spirits in order, one coat at a time.
one coat at a time. Yes. Have some bumper stickers made and everything.
Make it have color, will travel.
Oh man.
I
Wow.
walk into places and everyone's like, yes, people come to your house armed with K2s. I come armed with spray paint.
I love it. I love it.
So, I don't know. Interesting note. I'm loving where this is going, but I want to also bring awareness to, you have 5 books and 3 more in the works. How did you get started with writing the books, and what was your inspiration for each book?
I started editing for other people's books and specifically for my friend Mark, and got my foot in that way. So I always loved English and fixing things like papers and that kind of thing. So it was just a natural thing for me to edit his books for him and put them together. I just edited them at first, but then the last three, I think the last three I've put together for him from start to finish. So editing and putting them together on Amazon. So I guess it was about the second book I worked on with him. He said, "When are you going to get your book out?" I hadn't even talked about it. Hadn't even, but he's a psychic and he's a medium. So, I mean, I don't know why I thought I could hide that from him. And I said, I don't know. I don't know if I can do it. He said, "You have a book. I know you do." I said, "I think I've got a few." He said, "You do. It's time. You need to write them. You need to get them out." And so he just gave me that little extra push I needed. And he does all of the cover work for me and the illustrations inside. And in return, I edit his books for him. So we just kind of switch up that way.
That's
And
a cool arrangement.
yeah, yeah. And it works really well with us. Um, I've also lately edited a couple more people's books, and written a few forwards for some people, but I'm getting into more editing. And I'm editing right now. My friend Austin's, he's got a series coming out, documentary series called The Dead Chronicles. And I'm actually editing his closed caption speech for him. So all the words that go around the bottom of the screen as you're talking. So I'm fixing that for him now, which is new. Never done that before. I'm just
Which is
adding.
so needed because I love when you're watching a show on mute and you're like,
Yeah.
whoever wrote this caption was not paying at all attention to this because
No. And
they're
it could be that they're using just AI to do it, because he sends me the AI transcript and it is so far off on some things. Now, a lot of it gets, but it just pulls some things out of the woodwork. Like, what in the world was this? And you
yeah,
go back and you're watching the video. Oh, that's what this was saying. So AI is not perfect at
yeah.
all, at all.
Like
But so
I
that,
had a show I was watching and the person goes, "This fork is there's something wrong with it," and the closed captioning goes, "This work has something wrong with it." I'm like, where did you get the word work out of fork?
fork, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. But a lot of it is accents, different parts of the country, and AI just doesn't get it. They just don't get it. And if
Yeah.
they're speaking really fast, they really don't get it.
Oh,
But
and speaking of AI like that, did you see on, I think it was on TikTok, where the Scottish were in an elevator and it only is activated by voice command? And
no,
so it goes, "What floor do you want?" And they're like, "8." And they're like, "So you want to eat?" And I'm like, "We want 8." So you're hungry. It's like, oh my God, just take us to 8.
I love my Scottish friends, but and several over there. But if they get to talking really fast, they're hard to understand.
Oh, yeah.
Very hard to understand. I was on one guy's podcast not too long ago, Scottish Paranormal Podcast, and he told me, he said, if I start talking too fast, just tell me to slow down. He said, when I talk to people from America, I try to keep my speech really slow. I said, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. So we got through that one, and he was lovely. He was fantastic. But yeah, it's when you get to talking to people from different countries, it gets pretty interesting.
Oh, I know. And what I found funny is one day I was like, when you call in for service somewhere and they're like, you're used to the days of, yeah, can you put me in touch with customer service? Now it's, what language do you want? What department do you want? Which person in that department do you want? It's like I spend more time trying to discern where to go than I
Those are
feel like by the time I get there, it's like I probably could have solved this myself.
yeah, yeah. Or you pick the one you need, and then it gives you two more selections, and they have nothing to do with anything. Like, well, no, that's not what I need. Then you
Oh
got to
yeah,
start all over. It's ridiculous.
it's like you have a problem with your internet, yeah. So your phone's not working. It's like, what does my phone have to do with the internet?
Right, right. Mm-mm, mm-mm. So
Huh.
let's
So do you want to tease books 6, 7, and 8 any or no?
Sure, sure. So let me just tell you about what I've got right now. On Amazon, they're all in paperback and Kindle editions, and if you have Kindle Unlimited, they're free, which is a great deal. And
How
the
does
first,
that help you?
it depends on them flipping pages, reading. So you get a few pennies for the pages they.
Oh, 'cause I'm like sitting here thinking if you're giving it away for free, you're not getting anything.
No, you with Kindle Unlimited, that's the kind of little program they have set up. Now, if you don't have Kindle Unlimited, then you buy the book, just whatever price it is. But Kindle Unlimited, it's by pages that they flip, and you get a few pennies. So, you
That's
know,
good to know because
yeah,
I've often looked at the free option or paying, and I'm like, oh, I'm trying to help my friend, so I don't want to mess them up by doing the free version, and it
right.
being, I got your book for free. Sorry.
Nah, I'm not worried about people getting mine for free because they'll flip pages. Hopefully, they'll enjoy it and come back and get another one. The first book I wrote, Mark taught me into it. I well, the third book was actually supposed to be my first one. I couldn't figure out how to do it, so I just went ahead and did short stories, 23 short stories about pretty much the county I live in, and 18 of them are in this county. Happened to me, my friends, my team, and the Lady Chiffrobe is actually in there, and my bedtime story is in there. And then I've got a vacation from Helen, Georgia, my story from there, and a couple from Lynchburg, and one out in Arizona, just different things like that. And then the second book, Mark and I decided to write a fiction book. So I wrote 8 stories, he wrote 4. And then I figured out how to do my third book. So it's called They're Speaking, Are You Listening? My Most Compelling EVPs. And you can get that book and read. As you're reading, if you come across the EVP, you can go to elkvalleyparanormal.com, and there's a drop down menu in the evidence section that says They're Speaking. And you can listen to all those EVPs in the book, and there's over 100. So finally figured that out. Now, the fourth book was signs from our loved ones, near death experiences, and that kind of thing. And I didn't have enough to write that book. So I sent a feeler on Facebook and asked for signs from beyond. Have you had a dream of your loved one? Have you seen someone have a deathbed conversation with somebody that you don't see in the room? Near death experiences, cardinals, pennies from heaven, certain song comes on, cologne, you smell a cigar of your favorite uncle, different things like that. And stories just poured in from all over the country. So I got that book written. And as I finished it, I had other stories coming in. So I knew I had a sequel to that. And the fifth book, Realm of Shadows, is some of the spookier places I've been, some of the weirder, darker investigations we've done, not demonic, but odd and
Right.
off some way. Now there is one in there that a friend of mine was involved with that was demonic. And what happened. to him, and just, odd, kind of freaky stories. So my sequel to the Signs book is what's coming out next. But I had so many near death experience stories come in that I decided to split that. And Death's Doorstep, near death experiences, angel rescues, and spirit warnings is half of that book. So that's the next book coming out. And then the rest of the things that were in the Signs book, apparitions, visions, dreams, stories, of loved ones coming back, cardinals, the pennies, the scents, and the songs, anything like that extra, like any kind of sign that your loved one has come back to visit. That one's coming back for It's Not Goodbye 2, More Signs from Beyond. Number 9 is going to be some more freaky stories like Realm of Shadows, the 5th book. So,
Okay.
I even have a 10th book started, and it's about the old hospital here in Lincoln County. It's going to take a
Oh,
little while, though.
yeah, I can imagine having to sit through all those stories and figure out what's story and what's legend and what's myth.
Right, right. And it's got a lot of history. It's it was a boys' school, and then it was a teaching college before it was a hospital. And it's been built on at least 3 major build-ons. It's on a hill, which they wonder if it's a lot of native ground. They're not sure. But we've got arrowheads and, all kinds of stuff all over the county. So who knows? But it's a very active place.
Sounds like it. And I'm kind of curious with the region you're talking about that you're in. You're close to the battle site of Franklin, are you not?
Not too far.
Have you ever gone there? And because Franklin, if I'm not mistaken, was one where they let off the huge bomb that created the crater that they screwed up during the Civil War. Was that Franklin or was that further
Um,
east?
I'm not sure. I haven't
But
heard that story. I know Battle of Franklin was one of the bloodiest battles of the Civil War.
yeah,
And
where the son who worked for one of the Confederate generals, the son of the plantation that they were fighting on in Franklin, found out it was his family's home, and he goes, "General, can I go and visit the home?" And he's like, "Well, you can lead the charge if you want." And so he led the charge and ends up dying feet from his home because he gets wounded and taken into the home and actually gets to die at home. But,
wow.
you know, being away from your home for, say, 3 years, I think it was, they said, and to be looking at your home and then get wounded, taken into your home, and dying in your home, you have to sit there and think that one soldier is the luckiest soldier in the world
Right?
because he died with his family in his home and was with his loved ones and was not just laying in a battlefield somewhere going, man, I wish I was home. And to be
Yeah.
inside of your home, to think, I was so close. So he actually got to know he was inside his
Wow.
home.
You never hear that. You never hear
No.
another story like that. Mm-mm. I know a couple of houses were used as hospitals, of course. And there is a story about one of them in Franklin that they used for surgery for all the amputations. And the story has it that there were so many, and it was such a bloody battle that the arms and the legs were piled from the ground all the way up to the second floor window.
I've heard of that, and you have to wonder, not only stench wise, but energy. Like,
Yeah,
how many spirits are walking around going, "Where's my foot? Where's
yeah,
my arm?
right.
Or
And
where's my hand?" And be
and
like,
and two, you got to remember too, there was no anesthesia.
"Mm-mm.
So it was bite a bullet or a piece of wood, chew on it, and hold them down to be cut on like that. So imagine all of that trauma in that property. I can't even wrap my head around it.
No." And actually, even the worst part is like today, we think, oh, taking an arm off, it'll be like a few minutes because we're used to the powered or battery
Later.
operated saws.
Mhm.
But back
Mhm.
then, they were using regular bone saw
Yeah.
by arm powered. You got to think, you know, probably the first maybe 5 or 6 amputees per doctor had the best because he's got his energy into it, so
Mhm.
it'll be quicker.
Mhm.
But as the day progresses, it's like those cuts are getting slower and slower, not as deep, and so taking longer and being like, man, how do I get further up on the list? Because
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
definitely don't want to be last.
No, it had to be horrible. Just horrible for everybody involved.
Yeah.
Not only the soldier that was in that position to have a limb cut off, but anyone around there listening to the screams, hope or muffled screams, but you still heard it.
Well,
You
and
had to have heard it.
the thing too we have to realize is combat medics were not as well trained during the Civil War as they are now. So,
Yeah,
like, probably half of those people that they hacked a limb off probably never actually needed the limb cut off.
right,
And so
right.
it's like that's even worse is, to think about, if something happened and going, wait, you mean I didn't have to lose my arm, but you took it off anyway?
Hmm.
That energy has to be worse than the energy of going, I lost my arm.
Yes, yes. I could have lived a better life, and you took that away from me.
Yeah.
I mean, and there was no going back once they started sawing.
No, and I mean, but it does. I mean, I hate to say this in this way, but some of the amputations brought about some of the greatest stories because I read this story about these two gentlemen who lost, like, one lost his right foot and the other lost his left foot. They met on the battlefield, survived, became best of friends, and they went and bought shoes together.
What?
And because one needed one shoe, the other needed the other shoe, so they would buy a pair of shoes together. And
How
I'm like,
perfect.
this is just too hilarious. And it's like, this has got to be made up. But I've actually found it in a lot of text and, a few battle stories of survivors that would do that. They would, like,
Oh my gosh,
make
that's
friends with
perfect
somebody who
though,
had the same ailment but a different way and go, we could help each other.
right? We're a
It's
perfect pair. We're a perfect pair.
yeah, it's like we could, these boots that are really expensive will be half price for us because I'll pay for my shoe, you pay for your shoe.
Yes,
We can get it for half price.
I love it. And I never thought about that either.
No, I hadn't either until I was watching a show, and I was like, "That can't be real." And then looked it up. I was like, "Sure enough, it's a real. There is a documented cases where they would be like, yeah, we go do this, and we'll team up." And it's like, wow. But I wonder though, like, not to turn this focus on history, but you gotta wonder what was going through the minds of like the sharpshooters and snipers during the
Mm,
war, because these were brothers fighting brothers, or
yeah.
dad fighting son,
Hmm.
or cousins fighting each other, and to go and be on scope and
Yeah.
go, oh look, there's my family member,
Mm.
and be able to pull the trigger.
That would be horrible. That would
Yeah, I
be.
mean, because I mean, your mindset is obvious. Going, this is the enemy. It's kill or be killed.
Hmm.
You can rationalize that.
But it's my family.
But yeah, after the war's over, when they go, hey, we can't find out what happened to cousin Joe Bob. What happened? I can't
Well,
talk about it. Why? Well, we met on the battlefield, and I was the one that won.
hmm
It's like that just would be, I would imagine that would tear up families more than the war would tear them up. Is
yeah.
how do you look at the person who killed your own family member?
Mm-mm. Mm-mm. And get past it.
I don't know that any of the soldiers of the Civil War really ever got past all that happened.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm. I wouldn't think so. It was just too bloody. I mean, and there were so many skirmishes all over.
I know, it's like I'm constantly like, I was driving from Oklahoma back to Texas and past the Civil War Museum, Battlefield Museum, and I was like, how does Oklahoma have a battlefield museum? There was no battles in Oklahoma. You kind of have to have a battle to have a museum, and I'm like, I wanted to stop, but I was like trying to get home, and it's like I want to go back just to see, like, is this a museum of a battlefield that nobody's heard of, or
Hmm.
like you're saying, is it a skirmish that everyone's like, yeah, we're not
Mm.
really counting it as a battle because it was like 2 minutes,
Right. Right. Or
or
was
is it just
yeah.
saying these people fought on these battlefields over there and they're from here, so we created a museum to remember them? I'm like,
And
that's
it could be that. It could be because Gettysburg has memorials to the different states that their soldiers came from. So it would be like this group was from the Virginia infantry. This group was from Tennessee, different. So it could be that they had a group that went to whatever battlefield needed them.
yeah.
I don't know.
It's interesting you bring that up because, like, I remember growing up in the 80s and 90s seeing, like, the Army, Navy, Marine commercials where they're like, see the world, join the military. And it's
Yeah.
like, we think about it going, well, yeah, you do. But then you think about, like, the Civil War going, Massachusetts never probably would have traveled down to, say, Alabama, but because of the war,
Hmm.
Massachusetts marched by
Yeah.
foot from Massachusetts all the way to Alabama.
Can you imagine that? That's just that's like Forrest Gump, when he takes off running.
Yeah,
And I mean, that's a long hike.
it
That's
is.
a long hike.
And what people don't realize is they're starting at full pack. Like, all their gear is on them, marching until night. Then they sleep, and then in the morning start marching all day, taking a break at night or for lunch.
Hmm.
But the thing that amazes me is because they'll say, "Oh, these units were like super fast, and able to compensate and everything." Well, what they don't realize is they're not carrying full gear. They leave gear behind because they're like, "Okay, we're going into battle. We'll only take our battle gear now. Sleep roll
Mhm.
stays back." All that, and so they're able to move faster because their body isn't carrying the heavy weight.
Mhm. Mhm. It just had the whole thing had to be a nightmare. It
Oh
had to
yeah,
be.
and I mean there are so many accounts of friendly fire because when you look at the beginning of the war, everybody had the same color uniform. It was like there was no you would never know who was standing next to you going friend or foe.
Right. Right. And the thing that gets me the most about the uniforms is they were all wool,
Oh,
even
I
in the
know.
summer.
In the South.
In the South, with the humidity the way it is, oh goodness, that's horrible. That's horrible. I
Uh,
mean,
we wonder if that's why they never accounted how many were in sick leave. Because you never see statistics that says, oh, 200 soldiers were ill during the battle. It's
mhm,
only wounded, killed, but never sick. And, you got to wonder, there's got to be
has to be
soldiers that were going heat stroke
heat
or
stroke.
heat
Yeah,
exhaustion.
yeah, yeah. But, no, I guess you don't, do you?
No, and everybody will write it off as saying, well, it was the clothing of the day. It's like there is that, but that doesn't account for the long hours in the sun because that
Mhm.
anybody, I don't care where you're from, that takes a toll.
Yeah, yeah. And if you're not used to an area, it's going to take a toll.
Yeah. Just like they were saying, like the swampy bayou areas that nobody knew about, it's like all of a sudden they got stuck in, and it was like, yeah, that really gave it's like the perfect thing for one side because they knew it was there, so they're scattered around it.
Mhm. Mhm.
Where the people who didn't know about it walked right into it, and so their numbers count for nothing
Right.
because everyone's stuck trying to get out of the mud, and you're just
Eh,
able to pick them off.
They're sitting ducks
Yeah.
right there. They're sitting ducks. Mm. You know, speaking of wars, so my friend JK he's out in Colorado, and he's actually got a story in this next book, and it's called Bulletproof. He was in the Iraqi War, and as for us, of course, and he got his team got used to the villagers that they were around, and they thought, they were getting along with them. Unfortunately, looking back, you couldn't you couldn't trust any of them, but they had let their guard down a little bit because the people were nice to them, and it happened to be Halloween. And so their commander had said, throw candy out to the kids. And that's what they were doing. They were just going through this area and throwing candy out. The kids were coming up to them, to the Humvees, and they were throwing it out. Well, then all of a sudden, everybody starts running. And JK's group followed them. Their Humvee followed them. And then they got ambushed. It was in the middle of this cornfield, and they got fired upon. He is the gunner. So he is out, above the Humvee with the gun. He's, of course, got his vest on, but I mean, he can still get shot at
Oh
any
yeah.
any point at this. And he said bullets were flying right by his head. And he it was so much that he had to just drop down inside the Humvee for a second. It was too much. And he realized when he ducked down that his team members were frozen. They were just, they didn't know what to do. And so he had a voice in his ear say um, something like, "You've got to help them." Or so he comes back up and starts firing. He laid enough ground fire that he had swung his gun around and started in the back. And he laid enough ground fire that they could get out of the Humvee and cover his back. And then he could turn back around and everybody got out that day safe. But who was the voice that told him to stand up? And, it was almost like an angel warning.
Yeah.
We got you, but you got to take care of them right now. And he came back. He came back. So his story is very interesting. There's several near-death experiences and angel rescues in this next book that will just they'll make you go, "Oh my gosh."
Well, what's interesting is, a story like that. I was in Tombstone, Arizona,
I love Tombstone.
and I've always heard the legends of Wyatt Earp, and everything, and hearing actual stories about him kind of brought awareness that some of it is Hollywood lore and some of it is real.
Mhm.
Well, I, was like, "So how many gunfights was he really in?" And he goes, "Not that
Right?
many, like maybe one or two." But the funny story is when he was in Los Angeles before he died working with Hollywood on movies of the Old West, they would ask him, people would walk up to him and go, you know, "Did you really, get in so many gunfights where so many bullets were walking, or not walking, but flying by you?" And they said all he would do is open up his jacket and all the bullet holes were still in the jacket because he never took it off. And
Wow.
he would show his hat with all the bullet holes still in him. And you can sit there and, look. And they were like, everybody was like, "Dude, you are freaking bulletproof," because where the bullets were, and it's like how close they got, it's like somebody or something had to be keeping you alive.
Mhm. Mhm. Wow. I mean,
And
you just never know. I love writing these books because I've gotten to read people's stories that are just, they're so amazing, and make you think. I've got one from a guy in Lynchburg that this is one of my favorite ones from this new book. He was in a pickup truck going uphill and it had been raining. Well, he hydroplaned and lost control, went across the median into oncoming traffic, and a big rig was coming right at him. There's nothing he could do, nothing the big rig could do, and he was hit. So when he got stopped, there happened to be an EMS guy that saw it and came. He was going kind of slow at first because um, he didn't think there's any way that anybody could be alive after that hit with a big rig and a truck. So my friend Chris is who told me this story. He had broken his neck. He had ended up in the upper corner of the cab, passenger side cab, stuck, and everything else had crunched in on him. So he was stuck. And he had broken his neck, but didn't know it. Um, he happened to turn his head ever so slightly and caught that guy's eyes that was walking toward him. And the guy saw him look at him and came running. He knew he was alive at that point. And he got there and he said, I thought you were dead. I thought you were dead. And he started working on him. And as he was working on him through the side window, the windshield was completely shattered. It was all together, but it was all shattered. This man he sees walk up, and he's got an Outback duster on, one of those long Outback coats, and a hat. And he walks up to him and takes his hat off, throws it down, kneels down, and he said, would you like for me to pray for you? And Chris said, yes, please. So he reached his hand through the windshield to Chris and put his hand on him. And for an hour, this man, he had long brown hair, and Chris described it as crayon brown. So that color brown, shoulder length, and very nice man. And he prayed and he quoted scripture the entire hour they were working on Chris to get him out of that truck. Once they got him out, they took him to the ambulance, and he didn't see the man anymore. Fast forward several months when he has a doctor's appointment. And the ambulance driver happens to be the same paramedic that was working on him that day. And he goes, I remember you. He said, I didn't think you were going to make it. I thought you were dead. And Chris said, I remember you running toward me. He said, yeah, because I saw you look at me. I knew you weren't dead. And Chris said, this is I'll probably never find out, but you remember that guy that was praying and quoting scripture the entire time behind your back? And the guy just kind of looked at him funny, and he said, no. And he said, yeah, man, he was standing right behind you. He reached through the windshield to me and prayed and quoted scripture for an hour. The whole time you guys were working on me and trying to get the door off and all that kind of stuff, he prayed and quoted scripture. And the guy said, there was nobody there like that. Nobody. He said, I was there, and a couple more people that had actually been called, their work had been canceled, and they actually had some fire extinguishers in their truck, and they came over to help. But there was nobody else there. He said that this guy had a long coat on, hat, shoulder length brown hair. And he says, I'm telling you, nobody was there like that. And so they sat for a few minutes quiet. And the EMS guy goes, do you think it was an angel? And Chris said, I'm beginning to. And later, Chris was looking through his pictures of the wreck. And he said, Cyn, there's not a hole in the windshield. It was shattered, but it was still together. There's no way anybody could reach their arm through.
Yeah.
How about that?
That is cool. And the first time you said he reached through the windshield, my mind automatically was like, okay, it's either a loved one, a spirit, or an angel. Because a human couldn't go through the glass without breaking the glass more.
Mm-hmm.
And no human would reach through the glass to begin with
Mm-hmm.
and cut up their arm.
Right.
Just to bring comfort to someone, because that's not going to bring comfort to anybody if you're sitting there going, Oh yeah, I
I
can't, I
just
can't,
bought
I can't.
myself.
Yeah,
Yeah. So, I mean, it's stories like that that I'm getting. Pam, it's one of the best stories. It's one of the best stories.
that is a really cool story, and
Yeah. Yeah.
we'll have to have you on to share more because we're actually. I just noticed at an hour and 26 minutes.
See, time flies when you're having fun.
It does.
Twist my arm, I'll come back on.
All right. Well, maybe I'll twist your arm, but I'll ask anyway, and if I have to, I will.
You won't have to.
No, but we mentioned Amazon as this place to get your books. Is there anywhere else that if people want to reach you and share their stories, where they can
Absolutely.
reach you?
Yes, please. So I'm on Facebook, Cyn Shrader Hill author. I also have Elk Valley Paranormal on Facebook, so you can go to our website there. Um, that my link tree has everything in it. ElkValleyParanormal.com is the website that you can go to and actually look at the evidence and listen to all the EVPs in that third book. And then if you have a story and you'd like for me to include it in one of my upcoming books, I'd be glad to read it. And hopefully, depending on which book is it would fit best into, whether it's a science book or a near death experience book or a creepy story book, then we'll figure out where it goes. But you can reach me at Cyn Shrader Hill author at gmail.com.
Yeah, you cover so many interesting topics in your books. I can't help wonder if you'll ever be interested or maybe sidestep step a book and be like the afterlife stories that prove there is an afterlife.
Some of these near death experience stories have people that have seen something on the other side, whether it's relaxing, peaceful, good, or dark, scary. You know, they know they don't want to be there, or both. There's a couple that have seen both sides of that. Um, So I think you can get a little part of that in this next book, Death's Doorstep. So
Yeah.
that's what it's going to be called, Death's Doorstep: Near Death Experiences, Angel Rescues, and Spirit Warnings. Spirit warnings where they actually give you some kind of warning um, in a dream, by phone. I mean, they have called and gotten people out of situations or kept them from situations. It it's amazing how many different kinds of stories that there are out there about these rescues and these warnings and near misses because of these rescues and warnings, and then the full near death experience. So
Yeah, I like that you brought up the rescues because that was one thing I read in your bio. And I was like, rescues? What are we talking about? And so that'll be our teaser for your part two.
yeah,
Will be getting to hear what those rescue stories are.
yeah, and I've actually been rescued a few times, so I can tell you about those next time.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to share your experiences with us. And boy, now you got me doing it.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
No, I've been fighting a cough for a while, and every time I think I'm over it, I'm like, good, and then I'll start talking a lot, and then it'll be like, it's back.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. There it is. There it is again. Thank you,
Yep.
Pam. Come back for part two.
Yes, thank you. And we'll let everybody know when we schedule that. And I'm about to be on 2 weeks finishing up my road trip. And so it'll most likely be after that. So we'll be in touch and just keep an eye out, subscribe, like, comment on the episodes. And that'll be the best way to see when she comes back.
Sounds great. You guys do that. Do what he just told you. Like, subscribe, comment, all the above. Follow him.
And
Anything else? Was that all of them?
I think so. And be sure
Okay.
to follow and read Cyn's books.
Yes. You check out my books on Amazon. Remember, if you've got Kindle Unlimited, they're free.
Just remember to flip the pages.
Flip the pages, please. Please read some.
Don't just download the free book and just be like, okay, I did my part. And actually read the free book.
Please read. Please read. Let me know what you think about it.
So thank you, everyone. And we're going to say good night. Make it a wonderful day. And we will see you on the next one. Bye bye, everyone.
Bye.